Happy New Week, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Kind Regards podcast. I am your host, Zamira Mwabe, and today we continue the second half of our discussion with Priscilla Chomba-Kinwa, the Chief Technology Officer at Greenpeace International. She is a 3-time TEDx speaker, an emerging executive coach, and a personal trainer and a seasoned Spartan racer. In this segment, we deep dive into how she prepares for public speaking engagements, covering aspects such as how she ensures she connects with her audience to deliver impactful messages, and how she shakes off the pre-stage jitters. She also shares her insights on what qualities to look for in a sponsor and how to gain visibility to ensure you're on their radar to begin with. We also explore navigating corporate as an introvert, as well as managing corporate politics, where she shares how she's strategically waded her way through it. Let's get back into the conversation. You spoke about how you've had the privilege of being able to say no to certain speaking engagements. I'd like to know how you got into public speaking to begin with.
It wasn't deliberate. I think it's one of those gifts that you have, but you don't see it as a gift, or at least you don't label it. So I will credit 2 friends for getting me to even have the guts to call myself a speaker. It was very hard for me. So I would speak at conferences, I would present papers at this and that, but I never saw myself as a speaker. And then one day, my friend Masuka, who runs TEDx Lusaka, was like, applications are open. And I was just like, nah, not for me. And she was like, I know you have a story to tell. I was like, no, I don't. And then she shouted at me because she's that friend. You know those friends who are like, this is good for you. You will listen to me. So she yelled at me and I was like, okay. I'll think about it. She was working with another friend called Mokoka who was just like, Madam, adding speaker to your bio is good for you. You're doing it. So between the 2 of them, they sort of dragged me into it. And that's when I did the one called Living My Unboxed Life, I think it's called. It went so well. I was like, oh, okay. I could do this. And then because of my career as well, I started getting a lot of invitations to speak at this event and speak at that event. What TEDx also does for you, and I would encourage anybody with a really good idea to go for it, is they also sort of take you to the next level of speaking, because then there's coaching that happens beforehand and sort of really getting you to elevate your game. And I think that, coupled with my natural tendency to be very innovative, really blew me up. So like when I was invited to speak at the conference that I said no to this time, the TNW in Amsterdam, I was like, how will I have impact? And I literally had a friend of mine from, I don't know if you know the Kenyan band Sauti Sol.
Yes.
I had him compose a song. I bought the track of him and I opened my talk with a song because I needed it to be memorable. So it became a thing of really just being creative around how you deliver your message and how you make sure it has impact. I make the most of it when I get an opportunity to put out a message that I really believe very strongly in. And that's another thing. I only speak about things I really strongly believe in. If I don't believe in it, I just leave me alone.
You sound like you're an all or nothing kind of person.
More or less. No, for me, it's really important. Like I said, integrity is another thing that's very important to me. I want to speak from a place of integrity. I don't want to be talking about free and fair access to the internet if I think it's not important because it's the trending thing, for example. I don't want to be speaking about AI because it's the trending thing. If I'm going to talk about AI, I'm going to talk about it in the perspective that I truly think is important for better outcomes for humanity. Because at the end of the day, for me, it's always about, is this bettering humanity? Is this bettering a community? Is this bettering a person? Otherwise, why are we doing it?
I like that you've spoken about how you had the song composed for your talk. That's, again, an outside the box approach. And I recall seeing you post something about being at a speaking engagement and everyone on stage had their PowerPoint presentations ready. And you basically went without a PowerPoint deck and you had like an interactive speaking approach to whatever message you were delivering. And I'm keen to know what your preparation or what your preparatory process is like. What drives how you deliver your message? What made that one specifically need a song, Sauti Sol? I love that band, by the way.
I first speak with whoever the organizer is. I try to understand what their goal is for the entire conference. So an example I'll give is the last TEDx Lusaka talk. Their entire goal was climate, environment, that sort of thing. So I understand the impact you're trying to have is around people going away with an idea around climate. Okay. The next thing I do is I think what's important to me on this subject matter. What are the things I feel very, very strongly about? Because I mean, there are 100 people who can speak about climate and environment. But what's important to me is how technology can impact the environment in a negative way, even though I'm a technologist. And therefore, my default is to say, technology is wonderful. Let's all go into it. Right. Once I've figured out what message I want to deliver, I then start to come up with just bullet ideas. So I take a drive, process, figure out what's important. I'll come up with like maybe 2-3 ideas. I don't think of too many. And then I come up with one killer punch. What's the one thing that everybody will remember when they leave? So that can either be the song, but the idea for me is when people leave my talk, there should have been one thing I said that's new to them that they think about. And even if it's not new, it should have enough impact for them to think about. So, for example, in the climate, environment, and technology conversation, the thing that I used to get people's brains thinking was a story around Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines. The story itself wasn't the technology, but I really wanted people to understand how devastating climate change can be before linking it back into why technology contributing negatively to climate change is important. I also wanted them to understand that there are opportunities. So I almost always give two sides of these are the disadvantages, but here's the hope. I don't like to leave people in despair. I like to be like, this is what's at risk, but here's also the hope. So that's how I sort of prepare. And then once I've now got my impactful moment, I've figured out the points that I want to deliver, I then go into writing. So I literally type out the way I would speak, and then I leave it alone. And then I come back, read it, make any corrections, and then I go on a drive to internalize everything and think through what I've forgotten, where there's impact, where there isn't impact. And then once it's sort of internalized for me, I read it out loud to myself. And then I play it so that I hear it from your perspective. And I imagine if I'm in the audience, how will this sound to me? Where will I sound arrogant? Where will I sound condescending? What will I remember? Where are the moments where I should pause? Where are the moments where my voice needs to go up for emphasis? Where does my voice need to get softer? Because all those are things you sort of play with to kind of jog the brain into registering certain things. Because if I'm talking about death, so typhoon, lots of people died, I'm either making a choice to make it really loud so that it's jarring to you, like people actually died, or I'm making really soft to emphasize the grief that the family is feeling when they're going through that. So I listen back to then decide where the inflection points are, where I need to pause, where I'm speaking too fast. And then I record myself on video if I can. And that's how I pick up my hands are moving too much. I'm shaking my head a lot, that sort of thing. And then I try and correct them. The most important thing in all of this, and the reason why sometimes I have to say no to things, is the amount of research you have to do. So whatever your subject is, you have to really research very heavily, very in-depth, using credible sources, because the internet is also full of mad things, but you have to really understand what you're talking about. And it doesn't even matter what the subject matter is. So if I'm talking about climate, I need to understand the angle that I'm taking. If I'm talking about technology, water resources, sustainability, you cannot show up in front of people without having done your research, because that's disrespectful of their time. They have spent this 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, they better get something out of it. So really doing a lot of research and just going into depth. Even if you're talking about yourself, there are still certain things that you have to look into. So you also want to establish credibility with the audience. So for those of you who have studied law, you might have gone in your first course, learned about, I think it's called logos, ethos, and maybe pothos. I can't remember. But it's basically telling you that, one, you have to establish your credibility in terms of how you are speaking to the audience. They have to understand, why am I listening to this person? Anybody could be standing up there talking about fitness. Why is this the person that I should listen to? So you have to establish your credibility. And that only comes through really doing a lot of research. I think for me, the most important part of the entire process is actually the research piece. So I don't even know why I'm saying it last. And then we go on stage. We listen to Rihanna right before we go on stage. That's the ritual.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Fun.
Because then you stop thinking about the talk. Because a lot of people are very nervous by the time they're going on stage, because all they're thinking about is their lines, their lines, their lines. At that point, my friends, what happens, happens. So I listen. I just put on Rihanna so that I'm just like vibing. By the time I'm going on stage, my energy's up. I'm in a good mood. The one tip I will give to anybody that's speaking in such a setting, nobody knows what you're supposed to say. So if you forget a line, just continue. If you remember that you missed your second paragraph, nobody knew it was there. So just carry on. So
they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. They didn't know it existed. You are your own biggest critic because you knew what was supposed to be there. Generally, that's the process. It's a lot of thinking what I want to deliver, how I want to deliver it, and then preparing for it and just doing the best I can to get the message I want to get through. And this goes for presentations at work too, by the way. This is not about speaking on a big stage. Yes. How do you get noticed at work? You come with a boring PowerPoint presentation that anybody could have given, just send it to them by email. If you're going to present, I'm that person that's just like, you just wasted 20 minutes of my life. I could have read that in an email. But if you're going to present, make sure it has the right impact. Tell the story. Humans love stories. You want to tell a story and then go into your presentation because people are now invested. It's no longer a bunch of numbers, but be very careful. Sometimes it comes out as corny. So you have to be sure that the story is linked to whatever you're presenting. Be a storyteller in life. Doesn't even matter where you are. And make sure people remember what you said.
That's lovely. And yes, I remember pretty much all your TED Talks.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
I want us to get into wellness and fitness. What role does fitness play in your life and how did you get into it?
So I've done Spartan racing, which is like, oh my God.
What does it entail?
So it's everything. So you run, you choose a distance that you're going to run, but in there you're climbing things, you're jumping over things, you're crawling under barbed wire, you are swimming in open rivers. It's really tough. The final thing is you jump over fire and it's just like the most epic picture ever. But it's really grueling. It's really tough. I remember training for my first race was so hard. I would be in the gym with my palms bleeding, like
what?
Blood. Yes. And I remember the first time it happened, I posted online, I was like, my palms are bleeding. And somebody was like, here's how you solve it. And so I fixed it. And the next day I was back in that gym. How I got into it. In primary school, I was, like I said, I was a very quiet, very shy kid. So I had no idea that I was actually sporty. Then in grade 9 in high school, I had a prefect called Jacqueline. Wherever you are, God bless you. And she basically was the meanest prefect ever. And it was like, run. And then I discovered that I really could do a lot of long distance running. So I became like cross country was my thing. Then in college, I did karate. And after that, I did Pilates. So basically throughout my life, I was doing something at some point in life. And then in 2013, I think a friend from college was like, hey, I'm starting a 1-month running challenge from Woodlands. Come through. And I showed up. And it was Project Fit. And I eventually became a co-founder. And this thing evolved from a 1-month thing to this is our 10th year. So once I became co-founder, I was like, well, if I'm going to help people be healthier, then I need to do this properly. And so I did a certification in metabolic conditioning coaching. And then I did a certification as a personal trainer. So here we are, years later, still at it. Absolutely love it. Doing fitness stuff is the most amazing stuff. And it's so varied. You can do anything. It can be walking. It can be lifting in the gym. It can be climbing mountains. It can be hiking. If you're like me, it can be all of the above.
It can indeed be all of the above. But hiking a mountain personally would kill me.
No, it depends on which one. Mount Everest?
Not Everest.
Maybe. Everest, yeah, maybe. But all these others, like if I had to give a recommendation. So if you're going to do Everest, don't do the full thing. I would say just do the circuits. They have circuits around. So you don't get to the top. You're just like at the bottom. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
You've done it?
Whichever creator you, yeah, of course. I went alone, found a local guy. So it was me and one local guide. And I kept saying, and you know, when you're hiking, you see these posters on trees of missing girl. I'm just like, me with my Zambian self. If I drop into this precipice that I'm seeing, how will they even explain what I was doing here? But it was beautiful. It was amazing. It changes your life because every day you're seeing some different side to nature. It's highly recommend is all I can say. Also highly recommend Mount Kenya. It's beautiful. Maybe recommend Mount Kilimanjaro. Didn't love it, but I've been to the highest point in Africa. Kilimanjaro is it. But my personal recommendation is Mount Kenya.
I'm curious to know what your family specifically your children, make of all this stuff you have going on, right? Because you're killing it in the workplace. You do challenging things like the Spartan races and you're literally jumping over fire. It sounds like you're about to go into your executive coaching era because you said earlier that you're getting your executive coaching certificate. So it's like you're a person who's got a very diverse set of interests that you seem to go at 100% for each one of these things. What do they make of all of this?
That's such a good question because, and I think this is for all the mothers, there was a moment, a very brief moment of insanity where people's comments of, but your family, you're always leaving your family, started getting to me. And I remember this friend of mine who was a stay-at-home mom saying, look, you're giving your children an example of a woman that's out there doing what she wants to do, when she wants to do it, how she wants to do it, and killing it. I'm in the house and you're worried about leaving them alone. I'm worried that I'm giving my daughter an example of you just being in the house. Neither is right, neither is wrong. It's just a choice we've each made. But she was like, you should be proud of the example that you're giving them. And I should be proud of the example of it's okay to just be a homemaker. And that really stayed with me. And shortly after that, my kids came back from school and they were like, Mom, guess what? I was like, what? They were like, oh, today somebody said, let's all Google our parents. And guess who the most famous was? It was you. You were everywhere. There were videos and my kids were so proud. And in that moment, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So this is not for nothing.
That's lovely.
So I think that my children are very proud of me. They're very, 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 very proud of everything. I used to be very worried, but now one's turning 18 next month. The other one's turning 16 at the end of the year. They're old enough to have these conversations, and I'm no longer worried about them being sort of feeling like, oh, she's always out there doing something. It's something that I think they're very proud of, to have a mom that's doing all this stuff.
That's beautiful. And I must say, you've done all these things, but you come across as someone who's just getting started almost. Like you still have so much energy. So I actually have two questions related to that. The first one being, what are the different levers, attributes, tools that you found that you needed to reach for at the beginning of your career, around the 10-year mark and now?
Beginning of the career was just like really learning how to avoid certain things. So learning how to avoid being the girl that's asked to write the minutes in meetings. Learning how to avoid being the person that's being sent to go and get tea for everybody in the meeting, and learning how to avoid being the cute little girl that everybody wants to hit on. It's very difficult, very, very difficult to do, because you almost have to stop being yourself. Because I was in tech, so you're the only girl in the room most times. The natural penchant is for people to be like, oh, we need tea made. This is Zambia, by the way. We need tea made. Guess who's being sent? So my trick was to get to the meeting really early and sit in the furthest corner of the room from the door. Because then when the room is full and you want somebody to make tea, I would just look at you like you're mad if you think I'm going to start saying, excuse me, to get to the kitchen. It's not my job to make tea. If it's your job to make tea, please make that tea. It wasn't mine. I was there as IT. Minutes, I'll just look at them blankly and be like, I really don't know how to take minutes. Because I'm like, nobody's going to fire me for not writing minutes. You've hired me to do an IT job. If you have a meeting, figure out somebody else. Because when I'm taking minutes, I'm not contributing to the conversation. I'm not listening as well as I should. You won't hear me because I'm too busy taking your minutes. I won't have a chance to say what I need to say that you will remember. The most difficult one was not being the cute little girl that's just entertainment. That one is very difficult because I switched into almost being one of the boys, and it's a lot of hard work. What saved me was reading the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. She had the same experience of, I tried to be one of the boys. I stopped being who I was. And after that, I was just like, you want to go for drinks? See you later. Because first of all, I don't even take alcohol, but I'm tagging along just because of this myth of you have to be where the networking is happening. So that was the liver in the beginning. It was really just trying to position myself in a way that I'm not disadvantaging myself. At the 10-year mark, it was understanding which of my sponsors would get me where I needed to be. And I didn't care, male, female, me, I'm not that person of all the women. I'm like, if the man is the one with the power to get me into the room I need to get into, that's my mentor. That's my sponsor. So it was figuring out who would get me to the next level, who genuinely had my interests at heart. And I was lucky again to have a lot of people with power that were able to like mention my name in rooms, really prove to people that I was worth investing in. And I think this is not a 20-year thing. It's in between the 10 and 20 years. It was learning the politics of organizations. A lot of people shy away from politics, especially women. But if you're going to be in a leadership position, my friend, you're already a politician. That's just standard. It's given.
Oh my
you don't
God.
play the politics. You don't go anywhere. So I'll give you a really good example. I joined this organization. I had to get a strategy document passed amongst like the top leaders. And basically I was like, okay, who are the people that are most opposed to this strategy? And the people who were there were like, this, da, 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 da. I literally had a war with, I need to talk to Zabiwe. I need to talk to Jane. I need to talk to Peter because they disagree with my strategy. I need to find out why. I need to revise it to make them comfortable because these three people will determine whether this thing goes through and whether I succeed or not. So those are the sort of politics you have to start to learn of who do I need to get what from to achieve the goal that I'm seeking. So I think those are the three levels I've had to.
Now I have a follow-up question to that before I even ask my other question. But I feel like you've touched on something that's very important, office politics. And personally, I'm not someone who likes confrontation. So the thought of playing the office politics games wear me out. Just like before I even start, I'm like, oh my goodness, count me out. But how do you get buy-in from people who are against your idea, basically, like you just described in the example?
So if you don't like confrontation, politics is your best friend. It actually helps you avoid confrontation a lot because you get ahead of it before it happens. How you get people who don't like your idea to buy into it is by listening. Just listen. So like with these three people that I'm giving an example of, I literally just sat and said, listen, I'm fairly new. I have no baggage. I don't know where this story comes from. Tell me why you are so against it. And then they ranted and they raved and they complained and they talked and they talked. And then I said, okay, what I'm hearing is you're frustrated by the lack of delivery in technology projects. You think the investments are not paying off. If I tell you that I will commission a review of this project that you're dissatisfied with, will that help you think differently about my strategy? Yes. Okay, I will get you your review of this project. You, what's your problem? Oh, I think somebody needs to have oversight. Okay, if I set up an oversight committee, will you then back the strategy? Yes, because everybody objecting is coming from a place of fear of something or other. There's always a fear behind the objection. It's either they're afraid that you take over their job or they're afraid you make them look. There's always a fear. So just really listen, find their fear, address it, and you likely get what you need.
And what I'm hearing is you should do all of this before it gets to the boardroom.
Oh, yes. That's why I called it politics. By the time we walked into that boardroom, everybody was smiling. Everybody was happy. And my new boss was like, how did you get that one to sign off? I was like, never mind. It's not important. Just know when I come to you to say we're doing a review, you'd better fund it because I've promised a review. No, but of course it was a review that needed to happen. So it's also, you have to make promises you can actually keep because they're important. Otherwise you go into a negotiation and try and find middle ground.
I love it. You mentioned influence as one of the things you look for in a sponsor. Are there any other qualities that one should look for in a sponsor?
The sponsor has to also have the humility to understand that they can learn from you. That's the one thing I've found with the sponsors that I've worked with. The good thing is they know I have something. There's a value that I'm bringing. They're not really just like, here's somebody that I'm going to promote and I'm the greatest. So for me, they have to have the right level of influence. Otherwise, they won't be introducing you to the right people or the right spaces or opening the right doors. So really thinking through that, but also understanding that they need to acknowledge you and the value that you're bringing. I think also this one is not as important to me, but people who can sort of get you. So a lot of my sponsors have actually been Africans in the workplace who have gotten to a certain level, or women in the workplace, because there are certain things about me that they just get that certain other people who have nothing in relation to me can understand. Because it becomes very frustrating if you're working with somebody whose perceptions are completely different from yours. And then, of course, having the same value system and working towards the same goal. I'll give an example of one of my sponsors, Cameroonian man, brilliant, working in a totally different space to me, but understood that I had something to offer in his space, even though I was coming from a technology background and he was in health, understanding that we can use technology in health, but also understanding the perspective of an African working in an international organization and really guiding me through some of the things, the challenges that I would face. So he was sort of mentor/sponsor. And what he did brilliantly was that he combined those two roles so well that he positioned me to report to somebody who might not have understood me because they had the right title. But then he negotiated with that person to do my day-to-day line management because he understood that he could support me better. So on paper, I was reporting to the top level of the organization, which gave me a lot of authority, a lot of room, a lot of resources. But in reality, he was line managing me because he knew that he could understand me better. He could foresee the challenges I'll be running into. And it really helped because I was very young, very inexperienced. And this guy would be like, come to my office now, when, he can see that I'm in a meeting and I'm reacting a way that I shouldn't react. And there's one thing that he told me that maybe in today's world might be considered toxic. I have no idea, but it really worked for me at the time. I remember getting really upset in a meeting because people were deliberately antagonizing and rubbishing ideas that we knew were good, but people have different motives for not liking what you're saying. And I remember he called me into his office and he said, what's the first rule when you're swimming with sharks? And I was like, I don't know. He was like, you can't let them see you bleed. Because once they see you bleed, they circle in harder. And that worked. To this day, it has helped me be in spaces where I can see somebody's trying to push me to the edge so that they can prove whatever they want to prove, whether it's the angry Black woman narrative or whatever. And I'm like, you will not see me bleed. That doesn't mean I don't lose it. There are times where I deliberately lose it because I need to make a point or that's just how I'm feeling. But at least just having that when you're swimming with sharks, don't let them see you bleed, was really helpful for me, especially in my earlier days. And now I actually tell certain people because I've been in meetings where somebody, and usually it's Black women, people throw us into these very difficult corners. And then when we lose it, they're like, see, how can somebody at that level be that emotional? So there are times where I'm like, stop bleeding. Come to my office. Come bleed there. Come cry. Come vent. Come do whatever you want. But we need to get the job done. And if you're going to waste your energy on feeding what these guys want, then you won't get anywhere. So I do think you have to have a sponsor that gets you to where you want to get to, but with the right support as well.
I'll take that with me. Don't let them see you bleed.
Well, sometimes you have to. You have to bleed because you've got to cut. But as much as you can, if you can tell that this is deliberately trying to get me to do this, I just don't give them the satisfaction.
And how does one actually build a relationship with a sponsor, right? Because unlike a mentor who helps you develop yourself internally and push yourself, a sponsor is out there influencing, using their position, their name, their credibility to push you forward, basically, or to influence things on your behalf. How do you actually build that relationship? Because you may identify like, oh, this person would make a good sponsor for me, but you don't see how to even get your foot through their door.
That's very interesting, but I feel like you've answered the question. The answer is yes, because the one thing you have to keep in mind is exactly what you said. They are using their entire capital or part of their capital or a small percentage of it on you. So you, as the sponsee to be, your job is to make sure that person can see why they should do that. So I've never actively gone to anybody and said, oh, please sponsor me. No. What I've done is I've made sure I'm in the same room with them and demonstrated the value I can add to their life. Like I said in the beginning, this has to be a two-way street. And the one thing I really dislike, and it started happening some years ago, and it was a very irritating thing, was this whole networking spaces that are very extractive. So it's like, who can I talk to that will get me to where I want to get to? It doesn't work. And that's why a lot of those super networking ninjas in Lusaka are still super networking ninjas without having gone very far. Because you are not giving back anything to this person, yet you want them to use their capital. For me, every single sponsor I've had has known that when I deliver whatever it is they've pushed me to delivering, their own credibility goes up. I've had maybe 3 major sponsors in my career. But I'll give you an example of the person that I say, the Cameroonian man. I delivered that product so well that I started on, that his own delivery of the work he was doing, the health technology product, his own delivery was elevated. So he was able to achieve the results he wanted because I was now delivering. So it became a mutually beneficial sort of relationship. And eventually it reached a stage, and just last night I met with one of my earliest sponsors, and the conversation level we were having was at the same level now. He met me when I was 19, starting out my career. He was already like, global boss and so on. And he was so proud. He actually sent me a message saying, I need to stay in touch because I need to be able to say, I know that person. So it's also a thing that you're giving back. The person is not losing any credibility by associating with you. They feel proud when they meet you. You're delivering for them. I think it's what you say. They're using their capital on you. Figure out what capital you're bringing to the table. And that's what I think is important.
I love that. So concise. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that you realized the corporate world did not favor the introverted. What brought on that realization? And it was quite early on because you said this is something you realized when you were much younger.
This is something I realized in high school, actually, because yes, you just see it. Think about high school. It was always the louder, more confident, putting their hands up that the teachers would be like, oh, that one can be a prefect. Oh, that one can be a leader. Oh, you're in charge of the class when I'm out of the classroom. Whereas if you are quiet, you are minding your business in a corner, you are basically part of the furniture and nobody gave you any opportunities to demonstrate your leadership. I'm not saying quiet people are not good leaders. Quiet people sometimes actually make the best leaders because they spend a lot of time listening. They spend a lot of time introspecting, observing, but nobody gives them the chance because we think leaders should be boisterous and big and speak well and put their hand up. So for me, it was that. It was just observing that, look, a lot of opportunities are passing by. Now, I'm not saying quiet people need to become extroverted. It's a lot of work. And for any quiet person there that's thinking, how do I navigate this without fundamentally shifting who I am? There's a very good book called Quiet. Oh my goodness, it is mind-blowing because those are the things she talks about of how can you still demonstrate leadership? How do you still bring value in big spaces, even with your quietness? And it's that I'm the person that's now observed the entire scenario while you were all talking, and I can pull out insights and summarize them and bring them there. I can be the diplomat that's calming situations down. So it's really just understanding yourself, what the value you can bring is, and then really leaning into it. So for me, it was just observing how the world works, observing how things go, observing who's getting the opportunities. But as I've gotten older, I've realized you don't have to shift who you are. I mean, it worked for me, but I'm saying even if you don't shift a lot, you can still get to where you need to get to. You just have to be very strategic about how you do it. And again, I'm not saying everybody who's loud, thoughtless, boisterous will get ahead. Usually they will quickly get ahead and then they will crash because people realize there's very little substance to their loudness. They just present it very well, but there's nothing underneath.
I love a good book recommendation. I think I'll read it too. I'm not a very introverted person. I consider myself an ambivert, but I think I'll add that to my list.
Because we are online in 2024, it's Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And the author is Susan Cain.
Okay, my other question was, since you seem so energetic still, what are you looking forward to in the future?
Listen, Zamir, like I said, I don't think too deeply, too hard about anything. I really don't know what's coming. I'm sure it will be epic. That's the only thing I'm sure of. I don't know what it is.
You don't know what it is.
So I am looking forward to being 65, sitting by the fire and smiling to myself at all the stories of what I've lived through because I have lived. I am that person that, like I'm saying, I've climbed a couple of mountains. I have seen Russian bombs from my hotel window landing on Aleppo in Syria. I have been stopped on suspicion of being an ISIS bride in the middle of the night on a highway somewhere. I mean, I have lived. So I don't know what's coming, but I will tell you the stories one day. I've had a fun life, so I don't know what's coming. We'll see.
So in closing, as a tradition that we have is that you leave us with a quote that you would like our listeners to take away. So what's your quote?
My quote is, life does not consist of holding good cards, but in playing the cards you hold well.
Oh.
Shall I say that again? Life does not consist of holding good cards, but playing the cards you hold well. We tend to look at what we have, what we don't have, our circumstances, but whatever cards we're dealt, we have been dealt those cards. I was born black, I will never be white. I was born a woman, I will never be a man. So how do I play the cards that I have been dealt to the best of my ability? So for me, life does not consist of holding good cards, but in playing whatever cards you have well. because all of us have a story. All of us can have an excuse. I am pretty sure if I sit down with you, there will be something in your story that would have disadvantaged you and taken you so far back from where you are. But you, at some point, just have to understand, this is what I've been dealt and this is what I'm working with. Let me work with it. I may not be holding the best cards, but best believe I'm playing the cards I'm holding really well.
I love that. Thank you. And I feel like that quote definitely resonates with the discussion we've had today and the person I have come to understand you to be. Basically, you're like, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. You coming up with all the stories won't get you to where you need to get to. The stories exist. We acknowledge them, but we move.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Zamiwe. It was such a pleasure. And I really love the work you're doing with this podcast. Absolutely love it. Thank you.
Thank you. You know what I find especially heartwarming? When someone says, hey, Zamiwe, I was reading this or listening to that and I thought you'd resonate with it, so here's a link. If this episode made you think of a friend, family member, or colleague that you think would benefit from the discussion, do not miss the opportunity to share it with them. As always, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you found it as enjoyable and valuable as I did. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and follow us at The Kind Regards Podcast on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also connect with Priscilla on LinkedIn at Priscilla Chomba-Kinwa and Instagram at Coach Silla. I wish you an amazing and expansive week ahead. Kind regards, Zamiwe.